Let's deploy the AWS EventBridge Sink using pulsarctl. We'll also publish a few messages to our input topic, have the sink forward those messages to EventBridge, and then we'll have EventBridge use a rule to forward some of those messages to the SNS service to send us an email. There are some prerequisites that will also need to be completed. You should have created a service account for running your AWS EventBridge Sink and created a service account binding using SNCtl. I provided a link in the description to a video that shows exactly how to create a service account and service account binding using SNCtl. Then you will need to have created a tenant and namespace and provide that service account produce, consume, and sinks permissions on the namespace using pulsarctl. I've also provided a link in the description with those directions, but in that video, we provide produce, consume, and function permissions. So be sure to instead provide produce, consume, and sinks permissions. And likely just consume and sinks would be sufficient, since we're not going to be producing any messages to that topic with that service account. And finally, we won't be going over how to set up EventBridge, EventBridge rules, or the SNS service to send emails in this video. But you do need to make sure that the account that the connector is using to write to EventBridge has put events permissions. We start this video by using pulsarctl to create the sink. So to start, we need to log into pulsarctl using the service account with this binding that we created. I've called that service account EventBridge Service Account. So I'll start by pasting in the code to set our context for pulsarctl. And the inputs are the admin service URL, issuer endpoint, and audience, as well as a reference to the key file that's downloaded for that service account that we want to log in as. And then you always need to do pulsarctl OAuth to activate. And it should say that we're logged in. Now that we're connected to our cluster using pulsarctl with the service account, we're ready to create our sink. Let's start by showing you the final command, and we'll break it down piece by piece. I like to think of there being two main parts to the pulsarctl command: the flags immediately after sinks create, and also the sink config section. If you need more information on the flags directly after sinks create, you can always execute pulsarctl sinks create -- help for more information. And if you ever need more information on the options that are within sinks config, I've included a link to the documentation specifically for AWS EventBridge. For those immediately after sinks create, this is going to tell pulsarctl which sink to create, what tenant and namespace to place it in, and the input topic as well as the name and subscription name. Inside the sinks config, this is going to be information very specific to AWS EventBridge. Here I've grayed out the access key and the secret access key, but I've left the region event bus name, event bus resource name available for you to see so you can see exactly how they're formatted within this sink config. Be very careful to use straight double quotes throughout, and also there's a set of straight single quotes around the entire sink config. As you notice, the service account isn't specified anywhere, but it will be used to deploy the sink since we logged in as that service account, and it does require us having a service account binding. So let's go ahead and execute this command in terminal. And here you can see it says the EventBridge Sink has been created successfully. Here I am in the cloud hosted UI, making sure to have my instance selected. I then go to tenants and namespaces, selecting my tenant and my namespace. If I go to policy, this is where you can see that and confirm that the produce, consume, and sinks permissions have been added for the EventBridge service account. This is the permissions that you had to add using pulsarctl since it's unavailable to add sinks permissions through the UI. If I go to my tenant and namespace here, and if I go to the connectors tab, the connector should have started up, and here you can see that it says that it's ready. If I also go to my topics, I already created the EventBridge input topic here. You should see that the subscription that we specified in our pulsarctl command has already been created by the connector. The Pulsar clients page here includes sample producer code, so you can get Java code here by clicking through these steps. And when you get down to the client libraries and the producer and consumer code, as you can see here, you can use that to produce some messages to that EB input topic. I've included a link in the description to some more detailed information on how you can set up IntelliJ to use that producer code. But here I've imported an object for data model, and I've changed my producer to produce this object type data model. And it has schema avro data model.class. Then I create two objects, my model and my model 2. The first object, the type, I'm giving it cat, and the second I'm giving it a value of 11. So our object has two fields, one is type and one is value, and we're going to go ahead and publish that message. So here I'm sending it over to my topic EB input. Let me go ahead and execute this code to send over those two messages. Going back over to the UI, we can see here that we've sent the two messages. And if I go to topics, it's a good idea sometimes to check your topic. And the subscription has a backlog of 0. So those two messages have been sent and they're no longer in my EB sub subscription. So here we are over in AWS EventBridge. And let me go ahead and click on the rules that I already have defined. I have a rule called mySNRule, and if I click into it, in my event pattern, under detail data type, match rule is that the type must be cat. And I sent two messages across from IntelliJ. The first message, that type field, was specified as cat, while the second, it was specified as dog. But I sent both messages. So the rule will only match the first message and send that or forward it over to the SNS topic. I'm not going to go over the details of the SNS configuration. It's actually quite simple, but let's take a look at the email that I did get from this message. The email contents were as follows. All of this information with version ID, detail type, etc. is already populated by default. And then inside the detail includes both the data as well as a message ID by default. And inside our data is our avro object, where the type field is specified as cat and the value field is specified as 11. And I never get the information or the message that's related to the message where the type field is named dog, because we didn't include that in our rule for AWS EventBridge.